Hey guys, it's Alex here from Double Move Sports, and it's time for the Week 12 Fantasy Rewind. As a reminder, this is a segment where we just want to look back at our Twitter profile from this morning and see how we did answering questions, how we did giving input on start-sit decisions, and it's a really good chance for us to reflect on which decisions were great and won people weeks and which ones were wrong, and it gives us a chance to look at some of our logic with opportunity plus talent plus matchup to see how we can improve moving forward and what possibly happened with some of the stuff that didn't go our way. So I'm just going to jump right in. And again, this is not curated, we promise. We're just scrolling down. I'm just going to get to a random section. So we'll start out here. This one comes in and he asks about Allen Robinson, John Brown, Devontae Parker, in his lineup, and he's got Josh Gordon and Debo on the bench. He asks if any changes should be made, and we said no. This one's actually a pretty easy one. Josh Gordon's just getting ramped up in Seattle. Allen Robinson, John Brown, and Devontae Parker have all been great this season. So we kind of talk him off the ledge, assure him to keep things how they are, and we go ahead and move on. So a good start. That's an easy one, though, so let's get into some more difficult questions. Next, we jump in here. He needs two guys in 0.5 PPR, and it's Jarvis Landry, Kenny Golladay, Michael Gallup, and DK Metcalf. Fortunately, we got the big one here, which was Jarvis Landry. He had 10 for 148 and 2 touchdowns, so that's a 31.8 point day in half PPR. And between the other guys, it was really marginal. Golladay had 4 for 61, Gallup had 4 for 55, and DK Metcalf, I believe, had, let me check really quick, DK Metcalf had 3 for 35. So Metcalf was the lowest of those three, but fortunately there was only a couple points between them, where Landry's probably the guy that won him his week. So let's keep going down the list here. Next, he has 3 receivers, 1 point PPR, Lockett, Tate, Metcalf, McLaurin, Shepard, Deontay Johnson. Wow, that's a lot of options. We recommended Tyler Lockett. He actually did have a really tough day this week. Tyler Lockett has been absolutely fantastic on the season, but the Seahawks just couldn't get a lot going. He only had 1 catch actually for 38 yards in a matchup against Philly, but he was wide receiver 5 on the year coming into this. So Lockett was in a category where you're not going to sit him ever because he has just been so elite. He actually had a great matchup against Philly, who's been giving up a ton to wide receivers this season. So, if we could go back, we probably would have done the same thing with the same logic. You just can't sit a guy like Tyler Lockett with how good he's been. So let's get on down. Let's see. Darren Waller or Mark Andrews, Devontae Parker or DK Metcalf. He had Waller and Parker in. We actually said to go Andrews and Parker. And we already talked about Metcalf a little bit, struggled. He only had 3 for 35. Devontae Parker continued the tear that he's been on, though. He had 6 for 91. And he's had an absolute incredible stretch of games here. I can't even imagine thinking Devontae Parker would be a wide receiver 2, a strong wide receiver 2 at this point of the season, earlier on with how the Dolphins were playing. And he's clearly the number 1 for Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I think he's going to continue to be great moving forward. He's got Philly next week, and then the Jets, the Giants, and the Bengals. So that schedule really bodes well for Devontae Parker. And we also recommended Mark Andrews. We don't really know how that's going to turn out. What we do know is that the Raiders were an absolute train wreck. That game was a bit of an anomaly, it feels like, and Waller only had 3 catches for 41 yards. So you really like Andrews' touchdown upside on a week in, week out basis. So we really think that Andrews will exceed Darren Waller's output on the week. So another great call there. Next, from Brittany, she says, full PPR, who should she start in flex and receiver between Samuels, Golladay, and Edelman? So we threw out right away that Edelman is a must start, and that turned out to be great. Even in a tough game for the Patriots that was really sloppy, Edelman still came down with 8 for 93. He is just so steady, especially in PPR formats, and he's a guy that you're starting every week, and that's been incredibly consistent for you. Between the other guys, we did already mention Kenny Golladay having 4 for 61, which wasn't a great day, but it actually didn't kill you, where Jalen Samuels only had 2 carries for 6 yards, and he added 3 for 26 through the air. So he only had 6 fantasy points in full PPR. Golladay would have been the better pick there, but luckily we didn't talk ourselves out or Edelman, or we didn't overthink anything. So always a great call there. Next, need one full PPR, Allen Robinson or Jameson Crowder. We actually were pretty big on Jameson Crowder going into this week, and for good reason. He's been Sam Darnold's #1 target all season long, and he was playing an Oakland Raiders team that had been giving up a ton through the air. But Jameson Crowder did not come through this week, even in a game where the Jets absolutely dominated. And it was really interesting to see Jameson Crowder get shut down. He only had 2 catches for 18 yards, so that's really tough for him. And Allen Robinson had a fine game. Mitch Trubisky, we've talked about on the pod before, isn't the quarterback that we love the most, but Allen Robinson still was able to get it done this week, and he had 6 for 131 and a touchdown. So a monster game. We missed that one. Crowder's matchup said that he should be a startable guy, and it just didn't turn out that way. So unfortunately, we did not get that one right. Let's keep on scrolling. Let's keep on scrolling down the list here. Get a couple more. Flex, full PPR. Tevin, Coleman, or Beau, Scarborough. So we said Tevin Coleman, and to be honest with you, we're doing this recording in the middle of the Sunday night game. It's the middle of the second quarter. Tevin Coleman's got 8.1 fantasy points, and Beau Scarborough finished with 7.8. So Tevin has already beat Beau Scarborough's output, so we're really happy with that decision. Tevin Coleman had a couple tough weeks, and it seems like he is now bouncing back. Next. This looks like a big matchup. Going for the playoffs, he asks, half PPR, James White, Miles Sanders, Devontae Parker, or Emmanuel Sanders. James White had a terrible day, so luckily we avoided that landmine. He only had 5 yards on the ground, and he only added what was really surprising, 1 catch for -6 yards through the air. So James White essentially goosed you. Miles Sanders, we knew he was going to be getting a huge workload in this game with no Jordan Howard. We didn't really know if Jay Ajayi would play a very big role. And Miles Sanders was also fairly disappointing. He only had 63 yards on the ground on 12 carries, and then he had 23 yards in the air on 3 catches. So he didn't absolutely crush you. He had around 10 fantasy points in half PPR. But again, Devontae Parker has just been fantastic. We were really high on him this week. He was my start of the week at wide receiver, and he had 6 catches for 91 yards for 12 total fantasy points. We'll do one more. Let's see it. Oh, a big list here. Half PPR, he wants to know what he should do at quarterback. He has Dak in a tough matchup, and it looks like there's some guys available. Winston, Baker, Jimmy G, Wentz, Foles, Brissett, Goff, and he also has Dak. So we said to roll with Baker. He was one of our starts of the week, and we said we liked the Falcons D over the Jets, but to hold the Jets because they have great matchups in their next 2 games. Luckily, we recommended him to hold the Jets because they ended up with 19 on defense, and the Falcons only ended up with 4 fantasy points. But Baker Mayfield was fantastic, just like we thought. He had 23.6 fantasy points on the day, 327 yards and 3 touchdowns against a weak Miami defense. So that wraps up our fantasy rewind this week. We will say we recommended Jameson Crowder in a lot of places. We recommended Hunter Renfrow in a couple places as a really deep desperation play. We also did have Russell Gage hit. He was one of our deep shots of the week, and the first time we've ever done that segment. Only owned in 1% of ESPN leagues. We said to start him with confidence. He had 8 catches for 76 yards. So we were kind of all over the board this week. We feel good again about our overall body of work, and again, we just hope that a lot of our listeners were able to bring home wins this week, and that they'll continue to roll with us as we head into the fantasy playoffs. So again, this is Alex from Double Move Sports, and we'll see you next time.